Great. Have you had a nice day in Copenhagen?
Yeah, I've had an amazing day. I've spent all day talking to various people doing publicity, and then I was taken out for dinner by my publishers, and I had testicles for tea, which was great. I thought they said that would be the best way to prepare to do your big talk about feminism here in Denmark. Why not eat a big pair of balls? And so I did. And
How
they were
did it
very
taste?
lovely. They'd been smacked flat and covered in breadcrumbs. And I think deep fried, and they were extremely tasty. So thank you, Denmark, for putting a pair of balls in my mouth before I'd even started my day. Thank you.
Great. So, I mean, when I've been a feminist for a really long time, and I guess quite a big part of the audience has been as well.
Let's say that word.
But I used to keep quite quiet about it because it felt a little bit uncool and unsexy and so on. Do you know that feeling?
Yes.
Yeah.
There were bad times to be a feminist, and we've just lived through them. And you know, in many places we are still living through them, I think. The great thing about feminism, one of the great things about feminism, is that when something becomes as uncool as being a feminist has been for such a long time, that fashion dictates that it will have to become cool quite soon, basically around about now. In the same way that in Britain for so long, if you had a moustache, it either meant you were an insane right-wing Daily Mail reading arsehole or a homosexual. But the idea that a young straight man might wear a moustache was ridiculous. And in the last couple of years, young men all over Britain have sprouted moustaches. And I think it'll be very much the same with feminism. Feminism is for women as moustaches have been to young men who live in East London. It's something whose time has come yet again.
So now it's kind of like trendy and cool to be a feminist?
This is the thing, it becomes so uncool, you know, I mean, just simply from a style point of view, it was been so uncool and so neglected that it became cool. It's like a vintage thing. You know, it's like a beautiful vintage dress from the 1980s. I mean, such as the thing you would wear now. You know, 5 years ago, were you wearing what you're wearing now, people would presume you were a mad old nana, you know, who couldn't afford to go to Zara. Now, this spells you out as being, you know, incredibly fashionable and cool because you've seen the beauty in this old item and gone, I will wear it again. And feminism is very much like this dress. 5 years ago, no one would touch it with a barge pole. Now, you look beautiful.
Well, one of the reasons that it has become cool again is that your book. And I'd like you to kind of like read one of the really kind of famous call for action feminist chapters.
Oh, yes. Which one's this? It's the first one. See,
The one about we need to reclaim feminism.
Right, yes. Shall I stand for this? Reading feels like a standing thing. I'll stand for this. We need to reclaim the word feminism. We need the word feminism back real bad. When statistics come in saying that only 29% of American women would describe themselves as feminist and only 42% of British women, I used to think, what do you think feminism is, ladies? What part of liberation for women is not for you? Is it the freedom to vote? Is it the right to not be owned by the man that you marry? Is it the campaign for equal pay? Is it Vogue by Madonna? Is it jeans? Did all this good shit just get on your nerves? Or were you just drunk at the time of survey? These days, however, I am much calmer since I realise that it's technically impossible for a woman to argue against feminism. Without feminism, you wouldn't be allowed to have a debate on a woman's place in society. You'd be too busy giving birth on the kitchen floor, biting down on a wooden spoon so as not to disturb the men's card game, before going back to quick-liming the dunny. That's why those female columnists in the Daily Mail, horrible right-wing paper in the British kingdom that's taking over the world, giving daily wail against feminism, amuse me so much. They paid you £1,600 for that column, love, I think, and I bet that's going into your bank account and not your husband's. The more that women argue loudly against feminism, fucking hell, I can't even say the word. I've made so much money out of it and I can't even say it. The more women argue loudly against feminism, the more they both prove it exists and that they enjoy its hard-won privileges. Because for all that people have tried to abuse it and disown it, feminism is still the word that we need. No other word will do. And let's face it, there has been no other word except for girl power, which makes it sound like you're into some branch of Scientology that's owned by Jerry Halliwell. That girl power has been the sole rival to the word feminism in the last 50 years is a cause for much sorrow on behalf of the women. After all, P. Diddy has had 4 different names, and he's just one man. Personally, I don't think the word feminist on its own is enough. I want to go all the way. I want to bring it back in conjunction with the word strident. It looks hotter like that. It's been so wrong for so long that it's back to being right again. They've used that word to abuse us. Let's use it right back at them. I want to reclaim the phrase strident feminist in the same way that the black community has reclaimed the word nigger. You go, my strident feminist. You work that male-female dialectic dichotomy, I will shout at my friends in bars, whilst everyone nods at how edgy and real we are. The fact that it's currently underused and reviled makes it all the hotter, like deciding to be the person who single-handedly revives the popular use of the top hat. Once people see how hot you look in it, they're all going to get one. We need the only word we have ever had to describe making the world equal for men and women. Women's reluctance to use it sends out a really bad signal. Imagine if, in the 1960s, it had become fashionable for black people to say that they weren't into civil rights. No, I'm not into civil rights. That Martin Luther King is a bit too shouty. He just needs to chill out, to be honest.
But the thing I don't really understand is kind of like, okay, we had the fight for the right to vote, and then my mom fought for like sexual liberation in the 70s. What is the fight about today?
Oh God, where do you even start? There's one. God, there is such a huge thing. There's one statistic that bears on my mind more than anything else, and it's a statistic by the World Bank, which is that 1% of the world's wealth is owned by women. 99% of all the money in the world is in the hands of men, and 1% of it is in the hands of women. So there straight away is there where your problem is. Clearly we're still unequal. And I think we lost sight. There's many reasons why feminism kind of, stopped being fashionable for a while. And one of them is, there was a great quote by someone a couple of weeks ago, and I can't remember who it was, that was saying that modern women have mistaken comfort for equality. So in a world where we have beautiful shoes, you can go to like Primark or Zara and wear something that, it makes you look fabulous in a way that, you couldn't when I was a kid. You can fly off on, sort of like bargain holidays to all these different places. Hair care has become so much more amazing. There's box sets, there's alcohol. You can sleep around a lot more easily than you could even when I was a child. So we have all these comforts, we have a luxurious life. Far more than we did, certainly 100 years ago, certainly more than we did 50 years ago, even more than we did before Sex and the City, before which time I believe no one drank cocktails or wore high-heeled shoes. But that's not equality. And I think if you look at a lot of your life, and particularly younger women, they have mistaken comfort and luxury for equality, and they're two very different things.
But your book is not about money and who owns what. It's about like Brazilians and shoes and so on. Why is that?
Well, because that's, one of my favourite possessions is a T-shirt which homages the Khalees lyric, and which just has, "My Marxist feminist dialectic brings all the boys to the yard." Which is one of my favourite things. And the thing is that I wrote this book, I'm the oldest of 8 children, and we all come from a very poor background. We were raised on benefits in a council house. And we're all very different. And my 5th sister down, Corinne, is a single mum. She doesn't read newspapers or read books or watch television or watch films. She just reads gossip magazines. And I wanted to write a book that explained what feminism was, that just went, hey, read this book and I'll explain to you why you are a feminist, that she would want to read and would understand and get to the end of it and go, hey, I'm a feminist.
And did she?
Yeah, I filled it full of the dirtiest, funniest things that I could, and she got to the end of it and went, oh yeah, I'm a feminist. And that made me happy. Now, if I started off writing this book going, I'm going to talk to you about Marxist feminist dialectic, unless you liked my T-shirt, you wouldn't want to read that book. But when you're talking about Brazilians and high heels and £600 designer handbags, what you're talking about is Marxist feminism. It's just the idea that, that you're judged entirely on your wealth production, and, that we're caught up in this trap of constantly destructing ourselves with luxuries in which we can never be equal and in which women are particularly unequal. But there was a load more laughs in talking about, for instance, how my pants pants, my underwear, keep disappearing up inside me because they're too small.
I love that.
We seem to be. The amount of times that I've been on the tube and I've just felt my pants just go inside me, like literally be absorbed within me because they're too small. Pants these days are too small. They don't fit properly. We need big. Pants should be from here to. They should be like this. They should be from here to here. That's a sensible area to cover this with. But if you're wearing something that's like this, that's like basically a tiny hat on top of your mons. Then what does simple science tell us? Not that I know anything about science. It's that if you move your legs like this, you're gradually going to draw it inside your body. There's some kind of capillary action, and then you're going to be in the position where the reason that big tote bags became so popular, I think, over the last couple of years, is you then have to cover your genitals with your big tote bag like this and kind of pull them back out again whilst on public transport. Now, that's a bust system. That's not a system that works for us sisters. We need to go back to the drawing board on that one. So there was more. I wanted to do two things. I wanted to talk about the politics of feminism, because we must never lose sight of that. But the other part of feminism, particularly in the old days, was simple consciousness raising. If you look at that brilliant footage of the feminists in the 1960s, it's just loads of women with hair very much like mine, very unwashed, smoking roll-up cigarettes in someone's front room with all their children running around and cups of tea on the go, and they're talking about what they're going to make feminism in the 1960s. And they would do that by talking about what action they were going to take, but also just talking about the things that made them unhappy. That's consciousness raising, talking about Brazilian hair, why, Brazilian waxing, why do we do that? Talking about designer shoes and designer handbags and high heels and how practical they are. And there's nowhere that you can do that, because everywhere that we discuss fashion and handbags and consumerism is in women's magazines, where the answer is always, I know it's crazy, but I'm just going to do it. Yeah. It's just, I know it makes no sense and it hurts. And there's many things I'm proud of in this book, but one of the things I'm happiest about writing in the chapter where I'm talking about designer handbags and fashionable clothes and stuff, I just enjoy writing the sentence, a £600 handbag, you can't afford it. I'm very pleased to be the first person who's told you that. You will never see that in a magazine anywhere, you'll never see that in a celebrity interview, but you can't afford it. I can't afford it. No one can afford a £600 handbag. I will be the first person to write this sentence and let you know that. Because in magazines, it's always kind of like, they do that kind of cost per wear thing, or it's an investment handbag. No, a handbag will never be an investment. A pension is an investment, Property's an investment, gold's an investment, bonds are an investment. Something you're going to wear over your shoulder, then leave on the floor while you're sort of smoking fags over it and spilling drinks over it. If you wouldn't do that to your pension, don't do it to a bag. It's not. If you're staking, when you're 76 and your legs have gone and you're living alone with a cat, that bag's not going to bail you out. That's not where the money should have gone. You'll want investments at that point.
But there's something which really struck me when I read your book, and it's that you are something as rare as a working class feminist.
Yes.
Because in Denmark we always hear like, feminism is elitist. There's no, it's middle class. But you are a working class feminist. Is that different?
Well, in as much as you don't see as many working class feminists writing about feminism, and that's because, I don't know how it works here, but in the UK, it's very rare that if you're working class, you would have my job. The working classes just don't get through. You're not allowed to communicate your story.
But actually, you're not working class anymore. You're middle class now, right?
No, you see, I would argue against this. I've written a great deal about this, because the whole idea that if you start off working class, you're poor, but then you make good and you make money, and you can afford to drink wine, and you learn some more words, and you become successful. The idea that you're then co-opted by the middle class, who then go, no, because you are now successful and desirable, you're now middle class. Meaning that everything to do with the working class is something undesirable. You're only working class if you're poor and you haven't made it and you're struggling. And as soon as you are working class but you make it, no, you're not working class anymore. We, the middle classes, will co-opt you. So there can never be anything good said about the working classes. And I think there is another, the book that I'm writing now is a lot about class. And one of the things I want to do is have a t-shirt made up with the working classes do it differently. Because I think there is the working class culture is very different to middle class culture.
So what are you doing differently, being a woman?
Well, I mean, culturally, as a working class person, I just noticed the tropes are, if you make it as a working class person, you tend to splash your money around amongst your social group. You take everyone with you. So sort of everybody that you knew from back in the day, you bring them with you, you put them on the payroll, you take them out, you pay for everybody's food.
That sounds nice.
You host very extravagantly. You never tend to save money. You tend not to, even though I was going on about getting a pension plan, you tend not to have a pension plan because you're powered on fear and anxiety, and the only thing that keeps you going is spending all the money that you earn and then working as hard as you can to earn more. But I think that's very much not a middle class set of principles. The difference with bands is when a working class band makes it, as soon as they have one number one hit, they're kind of like, we've made it, spend all the money, hey! Whereas as soon as Radiohead have a hit, they're like, this is interesting, we've had a hit. We must now go and learn more about jazz rhythms and develop our career over 20 years. We will all now go to night school and learn more. So that's the difference between the working classes and the middle class.
The move you kind of like made from the working class to the middle class, even though you're still working class, is that getting easier or more difficult to do?
Again, I don't know what it's like here, but in the UK, definitely so. Social mobility is completely bust. And it's one of the things that makes me more furious. And one of the big differences that I've seen, and one of the things that I think has driven the disparity between the working classes and the middle classes is the internet and things being given away for free. One of the questions I keep getting asked the most in the UK is, why don't you work for The Guardian? I work for The Times, which is Rupert Murdoch paper, and it's behind a paywall, which is sort of seen as a kind of centre, maybe slightly right paper. And the left-wing paper there is The Guardian. And they don't understand why I don't work for The Guardian. First of all, there's no point in writing about Marxism and feminism in a left-wing paper, because they all know that. They're all sitting going, yeah, I think I knew that. Whereas you write about these things in The Times, and people are going, good grief, their kind of monocles falling out. Good grief! The lower orders wish to vote. Well, this is quite extraordinary. But the second thing is that I believe in the paywall, and I know that's a very controversial thing, but I think one of the worst things that's happened for the working classes in the last 10 years is stuff being given away for free on the internet. Because if you look at what's being given away for free, it's journalism, it's writing, it's photography, TV shows and movies that you download for free, and particularly music. And they were always the ways that you had out if you were working class. And now that stuff's given away for free, all of those industries are caved. I mean, I'm sure people who aren't even in the industries know how revenue has fallen out in newspapers and in publishing and in music. These are industries that some people are predicting won't be around in 10 years' time. And that was the way out if you were working class. But everything else, so these are the creative things, the things that left-leaning, creative, working class people might do to earn money. Whereas everything else on the internet was not for free. Car manufacturers didn't start giving cars away for free. Topshop didn't start giving away clothes for free. Holiday companies didn't start giving holidays away for free. It was simply creative input and, creative content. And
how is that going to inflict how we look at working class?
Because it's not represented, because we're not there. Because we're not there. And this is the same thing with feminism. And when you look at why feminism, has gone so quiet in the last 10 years, because if I, as a working class woman, look at the media and look to see where I am, I can't see anything.
What do you see?
It's not me. That's all I can see. All I can see is me. You just don't see yourself. And, on television, again, I don't know what it's like here, but in the UK, you don't see working class people on TV. You don't see them represented anywhere. In the charts now, there's this horrible sort of, at the time of Britpop, kind of in the mid-90s, something like 70% of the charts was working class. And that's now only 30% of the charts, because you just can't afford to be in a band anymore. And it's the same with women, you just don't see women represented anywhere. All the women the lack of choice in the women that you see represented in popular culture is, I think, what drives so many women to despair and self-harm and self-hatred at the worst end. But in the middle range that we don't even acknowledge as being weird, just constantly feeling dissatisfied with ourselves, just constantly kind of mentally picking, being unhappy about that, kind of being unhappy about the smell, kind of just sort of looking in the mirror and sort of imagining if it was like that. This sort of low-level unhappiness with how we are, because everything that we see is very, it's just one of the cliches, but everything we see is very beautiful. It's one of the things that, whenever I added TV...
But isn't this changing? Because I know you're a great fan of girls.
Yes.
And that's completely different. Why is that different?
Well, one of the very few places, yes. I mean, that's why I love it so much. Lena Dunham, I don't know who here has seen Girls. Is there a kind of general... You? Yeah. Amazing. I went to interview her in America, and I came on the set, and she stopped the filming and went, everybody, this makes me sound like a wanker, but there's a point to this. She went, everybody, there's a very important feminist from England has come to interview me, so say hello to her. And obviously that makes me sound like I'm amazing. But the reason that I love that sentence is the idea that even 2 years ago, that I would have gone on a set that was being run by a 25-year-old girl who's like writing, directing, starring it. She's the center of the whole thing. Who would be able to say, here is a feminist from another country, and we're going to talk to each other. You know, you realize how much things are changing. But what I love about, I wrote a column about this recently. One of the things that worried me most about being a mother was the pornographization of culture. Pornography is everywhere. This is how 98% of teenage kids will see sex for the first time. This is how they understand sexuality and human-female relationships. And I was just thinking, what can I do? My daughter's 13. However much I try to protect her, at some point soon, she's going to be in a car or on a bus with some boy or girl who's going to get their phone and go, look at this. And just show her something. Just some hardcore bumming, just some simple kind of, average hardcore bumming, something horrible that's represents the majority of pornography on the internet. And I was going, what can I do about this? This is horrible. And then I watched Girls the week later, and I realized that popular culture had come up with the answer to this pornographization of culture, because the thing that I hate about pornography isn't pornography itself. I watch a great deal of pornography and I'm a fan. It's just that most of it's just horrible. It's just there's nothing in it for me, kind of. That all you see, I never see, you get to the age of 38 and you're like, I just want to see a woman come. That's, surely the bottom line of pornography, it's not going to have an amazing script. There's not going to be incredible computer effects here. We're not going to see the Death Star explode. We're just talking about two people having sex, and I'd like both of them to be having a good time, not just 50% of this, both of the people to be having a good time in this very simple thing that's about people having a good time. And you never see it. And it's all about, men doing horrible and weird things to women and women capitulating to it. And then you watch Girls by Lena Dunham, and it's about many things, but one of the things I think it's most about is about the first generation that have grown up post-free internet porn and are dealing with it artistically, because in nearly every episode they're trying to have sex like porn stars, and you're just seeing what the actuality of that is. They're falling off sofas, it really hurts. She gets something in her eye, she gets a cramp, they can't quite work out what the right script is to say, and they get really self-conscious about it. So you're seeing a woman making something funny, dealing with porn, with porn culture, and kind of, in a way, solving it. Because, the first time my daughter sees some porn and is upset by it, I'll just sit down and show her Girls and go, that's what porn is, and this is what happens when you try to use porn. And, we're all just humans communicating with each other here, kind of Lena Dunham solved it. Thank you, darling.
But when you watch porn, what do you watch? Is it possible to watch feminist porn?
Well, it's really difficult. I mean, my ideal would be to find stuff that had Aslan from Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe. Particularly the bit where Lucy and Susan are on his back and they're describing about digging their hands into his fur and galloping and galloping. And he's got a very licky tongue, he licks a lot. He's always jumping over cliffs. I mean, Aslan is pretty hot. And then, obviously in The Horse and His Boy, there's that bit where he has to punish, what's her name, Avarice, and he kind of rakes her back. And that's quite sexy as well. But oddly enough, you can't find that anywhere on YouPorn or RedTube. I went through a phase of watching, because I think the thing that you're looking, the thing that you want to see is some people having sex and enjoying it. So amateur stuff is usually the best stuff, and I hit a really amazing streak about 6 months ago of just the funniest amateur porn I've ever seen in my life. One of which included a couple, and she had braids, cornrows with beads on the bottom, and she was on top, and they were having sex, and they were going at it, and they were really enjoying it, and then he suddenly went, "My retina!" Because the beads had gone in his eye. And that was a line I'd never thought I was going to see in porn. That was good. And then there was another one where there was a couple going at it, and again, it was really amazing. And then Sunday was sort of just galloping towards the climax, and then you could just hear, "Mummy, I want a drink of water."
Oh, that sounds realistic.
And they both just jump off the bed like, Jesus Christ. But that's what you want to see. You want to see the humanity of it, kind of, I felt oddly emotional. But the first time I actually found a woman who I genuinely believed was coming. It was kind of like, it was some sex. And the first time I ever genuinely saw a woman orgasm, not pretending, you can tell the difference between the two. I came at the same time, and then I cried afterwards because it seemed like a really emotional thing that I kind of finally had found someone having fun. You know, all these wanks that I'd had that were wasted on really bad, horrible porn, and I'd finally found a good one.
I think it's
Is this the kind of conversation you have in this place? I don't know if this is... I don't know how... Guessing maybe not.
I think it's time that you read aloud the story about how you had your first wank.
Oh my God, yeah,
great.
we haven't had enough wank, have we? Okay, after this I will move away the conversation from my vagina.
No, you won't.
I will, no, I won't, no, sorry. It is the Omphalos, it is the centre of the universe. Okay, here we go. So, where are we? Okay, so I've gone to the library. This is what it's like being working class and socialist. The first time that you masturbate, it's because you've gone to the library, provided by the welfare state, and got a book out that's full of shagging. So I've been reading Jilly Cooper's Riders, which I don't know if anyone here has read it, but it is a classic filthy text. If you haven't, I greatly urge you get it. You will enjoy it, if you want to wank. The first time I try, halfway through chapter 5, it takes 20 minutes to come. I don't really know what I'm doing. In the book, people delve around in wet bushes until something amazing happens. I kind of futz around a bit with my tongue clamped between my teeth in concentration and determinedly try everything in this absolutely unfamiliar place that I've had for 13 years. When I finally come, I lie back, damp and exhausted, hand aching, out of my mind with excitement. I feel amazing. I feel like the Fonz must feel when he walks into a room and says, "Hey." Or like the Duchess of York feels when Andrew kisses her. I feel kind of clean and light and happy. I feel, in this cherry blossom starburst glow, with my ears ringing and my breath still ragged, a bit, well, beautiful. I can't write about what's happened in my diary. My sister Kaz and I have had a tit-for-tat diary reading war on for years. Sometimes she writes comments like, "You're so pathetic," in the margins. When an entry particularly disgusts or riles her. But the gusto with which I write about the rest of the day's events does perhaps betray the extremity of my feelings. "Mum bought a pastry brush. Useful," I write. "Cheese sandwiches for tea. They're so tasty." "Dad says we can get the 3 Amigos out from the video shop. Yes!" And that's my first wank.
You know, when I read it, I actually felt a little bit embarrassed because I loved to masturbate when I was a teenager as well, but I never told anybody, and I was like, how dare you tell all the secrets?
But the thing is that, like, the structure of the book, even though I don't make it explicit anywhere, is that each chapter is about something that women keep secret. So it's about growing hair and how you deal with it afterwards, menstruation, masturbation, abortion, whether you should have children, whether you shouldn't have children, eating disorders, imaginary love affairs, bad love affairs. So it's all the stuff that you kind of, you keep secret. And the recurrent thing that we had when the book first came out was that men would read it, and they'd read the first couple of chapters and go, "It's really weird." I started reading that book and I went, "Oh my God, my wife is as mad as Caitlin Moran." And then I'd get like 5 or 6 chapters in and I'd go, "It's not just my wife and Caitlin Moran that are mad, it's all women." And then I get to the end and I'd realise it's not that all women are mad, it's that they're all this stuff that's happening in here, they're trying to keep secret. Because if you think about it, if I think about everything that makes me feel abnormal in the world, in society, it's everything that isn't being a man. You know, being a man is normal, and everything that isn't, the female stuff, is what you have to keep secret. You never talk about the reality of childbirth. You never, to leave a menstrual stain somewhere is the worst thing that you can do. Even talking about masturbation as a woman is a terrible thing to do, whereas men are in the playground going, "I spunked up this week."
I'm like, men, they talk about masturbation like, I heard so many stories about a teenage boy wanking together and then eating the sperm off a biscuit and so on. And I'm like, why
was at that party
so ashamed?
too. Yeah. The big one that I have for this is one of those moments where you're going to go, where you kind of go, fucking hell, this is so unfair, is about blood. Okay, so you know, I have a great many awful stories about my period because I'm quite sort of scutty and free and easy with my blood. But it was realising that okay, in the film There's Something About Mary, you know the film There's Something About Mary, starring Ben Stiller and Cameron Diaz. That's a film where the poster and the plot and the key scene of that film are all predicated on the fact that Cameron Diaz has some sperm in her hand that she doesn't know is sperm and unwittingly puts in her hair and makes her hair spike up. Now, first of all, any woman past the age of about 14 or 15 tends to recognise sperm on sight. You know, that's important stuff for us to be able to recognise. That stuff can have consequences. So the chances that Cameron fucking Diaz has got a handful of sperm and doesn't recognise it, I think is fairly small. And secondly, the whole point of that scene is that the laugh's on her. Stupid old beautiful Cameron Diaz hasn't recognised what's in her hand and has gone like this. Now, I suspect that's probably never happened, and certainly not to Cameron Diaz. But what's almost certainly likely to have happened is that you would have had period blood on your fingers, either from changing a tampon or from having a wank, or just from the fact that it goes everywhere. And that you would have had blood on your fingers and you would have then put that through your hair. And then if that scene was in a major Hollywood movie, then then every woman who was watching it would be like, yeah, God, I recognise that. Oh my God, you know, women would be in control of that joke. That would be something that would have happened. We'd be able to talk about this. You know, that's the scene that I want to see in a Hollywood movie. You know, women menstruate once a month. This blood is everywhere. And I can't think of a time I've ever seen it in a movie apart from Carrie. Whereas the amount of times that I've seen a man's head explode like a melon while he's been shot up with 42 cannons, or like, you know, legs flying off with blood going everywhere, people walking around with their torsos hanging out, all of that blood is fine. To kill someone, to explode them, to chop their head off in saw, you know, to dismember them, to torture someone and have torture blood all up the walls in Hollywood is absolutely fine and will make you billions of pounds. But to acknowledge the fact this gentle blood that happens every month, that means that, you know, you will continue the human population, for that to be as taboo as it was just one of those moments where, you know, I'd had a couple of smokes and I was just thinking, this is nuts. This is how crazy the world is. You know, this is the good blood and the bad blood, and we've got them completely the wrong way around.
But on the other hand, like, thank you. I mean, description you had of your first period is about the grossest description of period I ever read.
Yes.
Why do you have to write so gross?
All right, Mom. Because these are all the things we keep secret, and like kind of, I just figured that these are all conversations we needed to be able to have. While there are things that we keep secret and we expend all this energy in covering these things up, we are, you know, that's all energy that could be put into fighting the cause and, you know, furthering female liberation and equality. And while we're spending most of our time kind of worrying if we've left a stain on a chair, you know, and removing our pubic hair, this is all energy that should be put into the revolution. So I wanted to write a book that kind of meant that we could start doing old-fashioned consciousness raising and talking about these things. And I don't have any embarrassment. Like
you never felt like, okay, this is getting a little bit too far. This is actually embarrassing to myself to write this.
No. First of all, when I wrote the book, the cover that I wanted originally was, I went into a big meeting, we kind of sold the book, and it was the big meeting, it was all around a board table, and they went, as they do, have you got any ideas for the cover? And I went, yes, I have. At which point they looked very uncomfortable because they never want an author to say that. And I think they'd wanted a picture of me kind of half nude, kind of going, the reality of being a woman, kind of like this. And I was like, you know, I have actually got a really good idea for the cover. And they went, what's that? I went, I've got this thing called my feminist smile. And they looked scared and went, what's that? And I said, it's this. And I stood up at this boardroom and I pulled down my shorts and I pulled down my tights and I pulled up my top and I went, what I want to do is I want to draw an eye on each breast and a nose here and then turn this into a big smile. Big old smile. And they said, well, we hear what you're saying, but I might go for a picture of your face instead. But been telling that story recently when I've been doing events, and I did one on Sunday, and I was doing the signing afterwards, and this woman came up to me in tears, and she said, when you took your stomach out like that, she went, I used to be really big, and I had a gastric band, and I've lost a lot of weight, but I still got this, I've still got a stomach like yours, is what she meant. And and she said, when you got it out just then, I burst into tears, and I don't even know why, but just to see a normal, and what she meant was shit stomach like yours, just made me feel really happy. And I just thought, this is how nuts it is. This is the kind of emotional reaction that you have. You just see an absolutely normal stomach. And as a woman, I respond to that so much. It's why if I do TV now, whenever I go on TV, I always insist on doing my own makeup really badly, and I won't be styled. And I just want to look scruffy, because I just want to see something real. It's this thing where you just stand there kind of at midnight after a couple of drinks going, I would give my heart and soul to see someone out there who looks real and normal and who fucking means it. And so few women are allowed to go out there and do that. We have to cover up so much stuff. We have to look a certain way. The amount of times you see a woman standing there going, no, this is fucking it. This is how I wake up and this is how I go to sleep, and I mean this.
But is it getting worse? Because I think like in the 70s, they did nothing else but like talking about real women and hairy armpits and looking at their vaginas and stuff. What's going on? Why are we suddenly so artificial again?
Well, I mean, there's a billion million reasons, and one of the because the thing is that feminism is down to you to make it up. One of the things that I felt was really important when I wrote this book is to go, look, there's only one rule in Feminism Club, which is that men are equal to women. Everything up to that is down to each individual person to make it. There is no big Bible of feminism. There is no grand count. It's like the internet. There's no God of the internet. There's no God of feminism. It's a creative act that is the people who are in it. Whoever's on the internet makes the internet what it is. Whoever's in feminism makes feminism what it is. And so whoever wants to join in and make those rules what they are is what they do. So there are feminists who would now analyse exactly why things have become as bad as they have now, and I have a couple of theories. But I'm not generally interested in finding out why it's got as bad as it is. I just want to identify, go, look, this is how bad it is now, and here's how we can change it. And I'm an optimist, so I absolutely believe that within the next couple of years, the ridiculous, because it can't get any more high maintenance and false than it is now to be a woman. Because we're running out of money. We still have shrinking economies. Whatever tiny economic recoveries we've had in the last couple of years, they're surely going to go into reverse. We can't afford to be like this. And also aesthetically, we will be bored. We are creatures that constantly like the new. And we're so used to seeing women looking like this that it's only going to take one film where the lead star just comes out with a muff that looks like she's got a poodle in her lap for suddenly everyone to be like, I'd like one of those, they look amazing. And suddenly you'll have stick-on ones in H&M. That's, kind of... But that's how it happens.
Not that original. Maybe you're just saying the same stuff that they said since the 70s. Maybe it's just, why isn't it just the same?
In what way? What, darling?
I'm just like, all this about us not making ourselves up for men and so on. Maybe, haven't we heard it all before?
Well, yeah, but I think we'll get bored of that and move on to the next thing. And the thing is that I believe in popular culture, kind of even more than I do, in the idea of an academic feminism. There's, for 20 books that could be written analysing why things are as bad as they are now, looking at the economic reasons for it, most of them won't be read. And I don't know how much influence they'll have. All it takes is one blockbuster movie, written by some chick who can write a brilliant female character that changes something. If you think of all the amazing, often when people go, "Who are your feminist heroes?" I go, "Well, Batman, to be honest, and Chewbacca." And Gonzo in the Muppets. A lot of them are men or puppets, because I don't. Because, it doesn't, and I've got millions of women as well, but the kind of person that I want to be, with that kind of breadth of possibility and experience, in fiction, you only tend to see still in men. I can't think of a female character that's like Sherlock Holmes, who's as complex and weird and dark and as incredible as that, or a female Han Solo. You kind of go through all these lists of all these male sort of, or even Adrian Mole in The Diary of Adrian Mole, one of my favourite books, a teenage girl like that. The book that I'm writing at the moment is trying to write a book with a teenage heroine in it. Who's as talked about or as important as, Holden Caulfield in Catcher in the Rye or something, because I just don't see any teenage girls in fiction who aren't being eaten by vampires. Yeah, thanks for all the vampire fiction. 21st century, thank you. Although I do sometimes wonder if there's millions of texts that kind of try and unravel vampire iconography, and I do wonder if some of it is, our denial of blood. Because, if I just see a man with blood dripping down his mouth after he's walked away from a woman, I just think, thank you, sweet feminist man, you have... You have just come in and made this time of the month a much better place. I wonder if maybe that's just our gateway into being able to accept these things.
Maybe we should talk a bit about like sweet feminist men, because when I had to interview, I put it on Facebook. What should I ask her? Give me some questions, and there was a few kind of like gay women who said like, could you please ask her if she's just a little bit into women, because I quite have a crush on her.
Oh, bless! Hook me up.
They might come afterwards.
No, absolutely no. I've dabbled on all sides of. Basically, I'm out for whatever I can get. So I have never. I have never really drawn any rules. If someone's upright at 1 o'clock in the morning and we're still making eye contact, I have been there with them. Yes. But one of the things that made me sad about, I've got to do this big debate next month in Canada. Apparently, it's this huge thing called the Monk Debate, and the topic is are men obsolete? And it's going to be me and Camille Parlier arguing opposite Maureen O'Dowd and someone who I can't remember. And Maureen O'Dowd and the person who I can't remember, which is really bad, are saying that men are obsolete, and me and Camille Parlier are saying that they're not. Because, first of all, my biggest rule for humanity, other than are you buying around right now, is this polite? And I just don't think it would ever be polite to say to men, first of all, you can't be a feminist, and then on top of that to say, and we want you to be wiped off the face of this earth, and the women must now rise. Because I remember how upset I was when men were doing that to us. And, I don't want to reverse that, kind of,
But you are kind of like your really famous quote about, like, are you a feminist? Do you have a vagina? Do you want to be in charge of it? Isn't that really excluding for men?
Oh, God, well, they could have a vagina whenever they wanted. They can certainly have mine if they're nice feminist boys. I should point out this is all for show. I've been with my husband for 18 years. The last time I actually went out and got laid is, it's neither here nor there. But in theory, I would have sex with any man who was a strident feminist. With that quote, it was just a very simple way of saying to women, basically, if you're a woman, you are a feminist. The big rant that I do, the reason why I wrote the book is because when I would go for big nights out, after 2 drinks, I would be at the bar, and a younger woman would be there, and within 20 minutes, I'd start talking to them about feminism, because that's what I do. And they would almost always go, well, I'm not a feminist. They're really angry, and they hate men, and they're really shouty. And I'd go, hang on, love. Let's go outside so I can smoke. This is going to take a while. And we'd go outside, and I'd go, okay, let's just get a couple of things clear here. So you didn't go to school then. You weren't educated equally to boys. And then after you hadn't been to school, you then didn't go to university and get educated equally to boys. And then after you left university, you didn't go to a job where, theoretically you should have been paid equally to men, and then you put the money into your bank account and not into that of your husband, who, by the way, owns you like a chattel. You're not an independent person. He's legally responsible for you, and if he wanted to, he could put you in a mental asylum if he wanted to. And then on top of that, if you'd ever been sexually assaulted or raped, that wouldn't be a crime. That guy would walk free, and you would never go and press charges. And then finally, on top of all of that, you've never voted. You went and handed in your vote back to Parliament, because if you did do all of that, and that was your life, then yes, you are not a feminist. But if the reverse of all that is true, and you lived a life with education and equality and equal rights and legal rights in the eyes of the law, and you voted, then I'm here to tell you, you are a feminist. You've lived a feminist life your entire fucking life, and the reason that you have that life is because other feminists came before you and made that world nice for you. So the thing that you need to do is say, I'm a feminist, and be grateful for that. Just the one thing you need to do is say, thank you for that.
And do they eat that?
Well, as you can imagine, the nights ended quite sourly, and I was missing out on valuable time on the dance floor when they were playing Lady Gaga. So after a while, I thought I would put this in a book instead, and just simply throw it at people in nightclubs who say they're not feminists.
But going back to your really nice husband, apparently, because
Yes.
your book is quite a love declaration to him. Do you think it's difficult to be married to a feminist? Because my husband sometimes thinks so.
Really?
Yeah.
In what way? Yeah.
Because I'm always nagging him to kind of like clean up and be equal and do all kind of things.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
and
God.
say, yeah.
You're going to hate me. I just married the nicest person. Well, not that your husband isn't nice. This is a fucking minefield, isn't it? Okay, maybe it's best to say I married the guiltiest man who ever lived, or maybe the scaredest man who ever lived. I don't know what.
How did you make him so guilty?
He was just born that way, as Gaga would put it. He was just born wearing a cardigan, wanting to make a pie. The thing is, that like.
And do you get turned on by somebody like that?
Yes. What? Do I get turned on by someone who thinks I'm amazing and cooks for me and looks after me and is in a fantastic lay? Yes, very much so. Yes, he is. He is a full-on package. The thing is, in the beginning, though, in our relationship, kind of everything that I had been told in literature and in magazines had set me up really badly because my husband was not romantic at all, and this made me very angry with him and made me think that we should not maybe go out with each other. For instance, the first time he went away, the first present he brought back for me was, you know, in toilets here, in ladies' toilets, they have those bags that often have a picture of a pretty lady on that you're supposed to put your sanitary towel in. Do they have them here? You're kind of supposed to hide your bad things in them and put them in the bin of shame. Well, he'd got one of those bags, and he came back from a trip, and he came back, and I've got you a present, and he got one of those bags, and I opened it up thinking, maybe at least there's a chocolate in there, and it was just full of gravel, just stones from the garden, and he was just like, yeah, I found some pretty stones in the garden, and I put them in the bag of shame, and I've given it to you. And I was like... Everything I've ever read suggests there should be some flowers now, or maybe some lingerie. Where a fucking bag with some gravel in it. And similarly, when he proposed, we'd bought the engagement ring and we went down onto the beach, and the sun was going down. And I was like, "You'll propose to me now, won't you?" And he didn't. And then the moon came out, and I thought, "You'll propose to me now," and he didn't. And then the first shooting star shot across the sky, and I was like, "You'll propose to me now, and also I'm getting quite cold, hurry up." And he didn't. And then he waited until I had to go and do a wee behind some rocks on the beach, because I was bursting for the toilet. And at the exact point as I was squatting, he just bent down and went, "Will you marry me?" And again, I felt quite angry at the time. I was like, this should have been romantic. But his absolute refusal to ever treat me like a princess, to treat me like a girl, it was always just like, you are another human being who I really like to hang out with and find very amusing, and I like to go to bed with, and that is the absolute basis of our relationship. So for 10 years of resentment, I was like, but I'll never get to feel like a princess. When do I get to feel like a princess? Now I'm so glad that I never felt like a princess, because everything that I understand is the princess phase ends, and then you have to reconfigure your relationship. But we never had to do that. We were always just two mates who had sex, and it's worked out very well.
In Denmark at the moment, everybody is talking about that actually the people who have the problem is the men, because they kind of like commit suicide and they are homeless, and actually they're maybe kind of like losing out in some way. Do you have that discussion in England about men being the real losers?
Well, I think that the big thing here is that what we keep having, there are certain subjects that are seen as a problem of feminism. Like, for instance, childcare is seen as a problem of feminism. Rape is seen as a problem of feminism. Female genital mutilation. We kind of, equal pay. These are all seen as things that feminism needs to sort out. And I don't believe in there being any such thing as a problem of feminism, because with all these things, these are problems of humanity. The idea that we're chopping these things up, because if anything is hobbling 52% of the world, if anything is stopping us from being able to contribute everything that we can to the world and to raise our children properly, this is going to fuck up the whole world, not just women. We all live quite near to each other. It's not like women do come from Mars and men do come from Venus. If that was actually true, then there would be more of a basis for there being problems of feminism and problems of masculinity. But we all live next door to each other. We're all living in the same house. We're all in the same office. And so, when either side has a problem, we can't go, that's a problem for men or that's a problem for women. We just need to go, this is a problem of humanity. And this is why so many things get sectioned off into different parts of the media or into different parts of academia or to different parts of government. And it's to our detriment. What we need to do is just stop saying that there are problems that are specific to one sex and go, these are the problems of humanity. And it's the same with all equality. I mean, this is the whole thing about kind of, Marxist feminism. This is equality across the board for people of colour, for people, of disability, for the trans community. Because if you look at a map of the world, and all the troubled parts are marked in red, almost without exception, the places that have the most war, that have the most poverty, that have the worst infant mortality, these are the places where there's the least equality, where, to be gay is illegal or will be horribly punished, where women aren't given the vote or are massively misused in the community, where disabled people are just left in spare rooms and left to rot. Where the idea of you even being transsexual is just, you would keep that a secret within your family for the rest of your life, and you just sort of look at this map of trouble, and it overlays, trouble and poverty and war, and it overlays with all the places that are the least equal, and you go, well, that's because the greatest resource that any country has isn't uranium or oil or gold, it's brains. It's people. And in any country where, 52% or more of the population is being kept out of business and parliament, and having an equal say in the running of that country is simply more stupid. These are the unequal countries are the stupid countries. They have to be. They've got the least brains on the job. And so that's why when you're talking about, problems that are, problems of racism or of sexuality or feminism or stuff, we need to, this is the whole point of kind of, the sort of that Marxist community. You just kind of go, no, these are all the problems of oppressed people. These are all the problems of marginalised people, and it does us all good to all band together because all together we can make the world a better place.
But do you think then it's possible to kind of kindly convince the men that they should just give the power back and share with us?
Well, first of all, generally, in terms of, because there's two things, isn't there? There's power and then there's men. And when we talk about feminism, we tend to talk about, why aren't the men helping feminism? But then there's a whole load of kind of men who would declare themselves to be feminist, who don't want to write about feminism because there are certain sections of feminists who would say, no man could ever be a feminist, you're not allowed to join in. And I think a lot of men are scared to say, I'd like to help with the feminist cause. I can remember very much in the 80s, kind of, in our country, sort of, if you turned up at the feminist unions at universities, the women would just go, leave here if you're a man. And that's why, I felt it very important to make it clear in How to Be a Woman, that we all need to be together. Anyone who says that they are a feminist is welcome to my big feminist party. And this is the same, there are sections of the feminist community who say that, if you're a male to female transsexual, that you could never be a feminist. And I can't see how that's even logical. First of all, again, it's impolite. The big rule is, are you being polite? And to exclude people from feminism is not polite. So you must join our big female party. And secondly, I had an easy ride being a woman. I was just, I was born this way. Someone who's made the commitment to turn themselves into the pain and the problems, the humiliation and the bravery that it takes to turn from a man into a woman, to change your body from a male body into a female body, absolutely is entitled to call themselves a woman. You have proved it far more than I have, love.
So do you think... So do you think when there's not more men calling themselves feminists, it's just because they're kind of afraid that we won't let them?
Well, I think a lot of them are. I think a lot of, in the same way that, I would be, or until very recently, I would have been very reluctant to, in my journalism, wade into a conversation about racism, because I would just think, well, I don't want to speak for the people whose problem this is. Kind of let you tell your stories, kind of, but then you start realising, it takes some more research and you need to go out there and find more stuff out, but any problem that you see out there is a problem for humanity. And I think women, I think it's a very important thing that we do now, in feminism, is to encourage men to join the feminist movement and see what they can do, because the men, while it's still just, basically, if feminism is only ever women going, this isn't right and we need to change it, then that necessarily means that we're always the ones complaining about stuff and whining about stuff from a position of not having any power. And that is why, it turns so many people off, because we just look like whining, angry losers.
But do you truly believe that the world would be nicer and greater for men as well if women had more power and we were more equal?
Yeah, because we need more ideas in the pot. I mean, I don't think there's many people that can have seen what's happened in the economies of, particularly sort of Europe and the first world over the last couple of years, and have gone, yes, the fact that this world is generally run by white, straight, able-bodied men, we've definitely got all the best ideas in the pot there. You are absolutely all functioning on all the ideas we could possibly have, and things are going swimmingly right now. This is great, You just look at that and go, we really seriously need to look at, a different way of doing stuff. And one of the things that I was writing about last week is, one of the things I think we need to get rid of is party politics. like kind of, again, I don't know what the situation is here, but generally across the first world, you find that younger generations just have that thing of whoever you vote for, the government gets in. Everything kind of sort of centres, it coalesces into centre-right politics. People get angry about the infighting. It's all politicking. And how we've always run party politics before is that it's on the basis of emotion. We kind of have an emotional tie either to the left or to the right or to the centre. But that's useless now. What I'd like to do is scrap the party system and go, let's look at metadata. Let's look at all the different governmental systems in the world, left, right and centre, and see which of their policies worked if you coalesce all this data together, which one of them were the more functional, and then form a party that's around what's actually been proven to work. I suspect as a lefty socialist, I would find some of my socialist principles don't actually work that well in certain areas of policy, but I suspect there'll be some right-wing people who would find that some of their favourite theories don't work well in other areas of policy. But we could bring all these things together and change something, bring it based on information.
About fighting men against women, and black against white,
exactly.
and so on.
No, I mean, this is the thing. Like, as Britain's third most famous, funny feminist with big hair, I get to go on a lot of TV shows and we talk about feminism, and the setup is always the same. You go onto a show and everyone talks for a couple of minutes, but what they always do is have someone who believes in feminism and someone who doesn't believe in feminism, and they have a fight for 3 minutes, and that's the end. And it's the same with every news show. There's kind of like someone who's in favour of something and someone who's against something, and they fight. And I think that's a very male thing. And one of the things that was most commented on in Britain last year, there's been loads of surveys about the amount of disproportionate amount of men on who write the news and appear on radio and television. It's something like 97% of all the people that we have on our big news show, Newsnight, are men. And there was one Christmas where clearly all the men had gone on holiday, had gone skiing. And there was one episode that was solely presented by and included women, and there was one token man. And it was a completely different show. For starters, when the presenter threw to the first expert, they were talking about the economy, she just went, I just want to say how amazing it is that we have this other economist on the show, because this was the only person who saw the 2008 crash coming up. And indeed, I want to ask you a question about what you did. So instead of it being an argument, the idea that the first person you threw to, instead of going, I've got my thing to say and I want to do my argument, was like, we need to acknowledge that this person's amazing and I need to ask you a question. And it became a discussion. I mean, I know that's such a cliched view of what it would be like, kind of, if women were in charge of things, but it just happened spontaneously within one show. And Twitter was alive with it. Facebook was all alive with it. It was talked about in the papers the next day, that this amazing one day of the ladies being able to, talk about the news. Just kind of like, this is incredible. And it actually come to some conclusions by the end of it. It hadn't just been a Punch and Judy fight. It was really I felt quite emotional. But I had 3 glasses of wine by that point.
Another thing I'm always struck by when I watch the news is that there is no older women at the news. And I'm thinking about your grey hair.
Yes.
It's not very long ago that I told my friend who got grey hair as well, colour it before you go to a job interview. Because I felt she looked really radical. And afterwards I was asking myself, what is so radical about grey hair? Why is it so radical?
Well, it is nuts, isn't it? Again, I mean, I think it'll be a fashion thing. I mean, there's 2 things. There's the angry political response that I would have to this, and then there's also my Pollyanna-ish optimism that at a point where, I mean, for instance, like when I look at Paul McCartney's hair, Paul McCartney's done such a bad dye job on his hair. It's like it's kind of purple, kind of mullet. It's just like... And I just think, and sort of, when there's dye jobs, when someone's that rich and that cool and they've still got really shit hair when it's purple and you're 67, that at some point soon, white hair will look better. So just, I think the fashion will turn. But no, I mean, it is the awful thing that kind of men are allowed to appear on television looking like wizards, with hair coming in their ears, their eyes, just kind of slumps, just kind of like, whereas women kind of, you just Botox yourself out of existence and then you're removed entirely from television by the time you're like 47 tops. Again, in our country, I don't know if it's different here. I've got a plan with this. This is not natural, by the way, sadly. It is my homage to Emmylou Harris and Morticia Addams, my 2 biggest heroines. And... But my plan is that when I get, I think probably to 50, I'm going to reverse it overnight, and then this is all going to go white, and that's going to be a black streak there. But I'm absolutely going to rock white hair. I think it looks amazing.
But why do you think we are so kind of like afraid of women looking old?
Well, I think a lot of it's to do with, well, first of all, it's, the obvious stuff, like, well, they're not fertile anymore if they look old, so kind of, we lose interest in them sexually. But it's also the fact, I think, that kind of like lines and wrinkles and grey hair, if you think about what you Botox off your face or what plastic surgery removes from your face, I mean, a lot of it is kind of annoyance, it's anger, it's kind of impatience, it's stuff that says, I've been alive longer than you, now get out my fucking way. Listen to me, shut up. And whenever women have to sort of constantly present a youthful face, you're kind of also presenting a constantly innocent face. And, I like the idea, the one thing that makes me sad about Madonna, who I generally, totally love, is that she didn't go hag. She didn't just turn into a massive witch. It would have been amazing if Madonna had just kind of gone and turned into a crone and just kind of stood there kind of in front of all the younger pop boys going, yes, I am fully covered in wrinkles, I've got hair out to here that's grey, and, if you try and tell me, Madonna, what to do in the pop world, I will slap you upside the head because I am an angry old woman and I want to go home and have my tea. I think we want to remove the wisdom from our face and the fact that we are impatient and older and want to get on with things.
But are you getting a bit afraid now because like you're approaching 40 and then kind of like normally your star is starting to fall in the media world as a woman? Do you get afraid of getting older yourself?
Well, I mean, a lot of what I've done is preemptive because when the book, when I first started being a journalist and then particularly when the book came off, I was offered a series of lovely photo shoots. They're always like, we'll get you an amazing photographer in, we'll make you look. We'll make you look beautiful, we'll style you and all this kind of stuff. And it's things like, again, this is not bitching because I could never bitch about Tina Fey if I tried, but love Tina Fey, 30 Rock. But what often happens if you were kind of, an ugly, spectacled fat girl and then you become funny and lose a bit of weight, that as soon as you become in any way successful, they go, and would you like to go to the Oscars in a very beautiful dress? Would you like to appear on the front of Vanity Fair, kind of posing like this, just in a man's shirt and we'll Photoshop you so you look amazing? And you fall for the kind of, yes, I will have my Cinderella moment. But then that, of course, means that a couple of years down the line, when you start looking rougher, they can kind of go, oh, well, she's lost it now. Whereas my policy has always been to constantly look rough, all the way through. And I hugely recommend that. Never, you kind of go, well, it's a catch-22 situation. It's just never ending. If you start trying to look hot at some point, you've got to continue looking hot forever, unless you want that sad thing where people went, you stopped looking hot about 6 months ago. Whereas if you never looked hot, you never have that terrible day of reckoning. And that's why I like turning up to doing things like this, looking like this and doing TV looking as rough as possible. I think there's an enormous amount to be said in looking quite terrible. It keeps you safe. It's, kind of, who can have a go at you?
And don't you think you could ever be tempted to kind of like just use a little Botox or something at some point?
Well, first of all, the fact that I've banged on about it so endlessly means that kind of like, people will be watching very carefully to see if I suddenly turn up kind of like, hi! I still believe in feminism. I am untouched by the needle. Secondly, I genuinely would rather spend the money on wine and cheese. Thirdly, it would terrify my husband, and it's no, you should never do something, because it would please your husband. But then maybe, but then actually you should, if you love your husband and it would terrify him, it's not the only reason why you should do something, but I think it's certainly something to bear in consideration, but in the same way that he's begged me never ever to have a Brazilian. He was like, obviously everyone to their own, but to my mind, when a vagina looks like that, it belongs to a child and I should be changing its nappy. I would find it very weird to find it in your pants. Please never do that.
We got to talk about pubic hair. I'm sorry. I mean,
of course.
What's up with this fashion? You think
it's deeply troubling. I mean, there are times where I'm a keen swimmer, so I've always been in changing rooms a lot, and also I go in changing rooms a lot because I'm a woman and I go to shops. And there was this sad moment a couple of years ago where I was in the changing room, and I just looked around, and every single fanny that I could see was smooth and pink, and I just suddenly had a moment of nostalgia, the first moment of nostalgia I'd ever had at the age of 32, just going, I remember when they looked different. I just remember where everywhere you'd look, it would just look completely different. There'd be little wigs and kind of, different coloured hairs everywhere. It'd be interesting, kind of, oh, she dyes her hair. That's interesting. The colour and coughs don't match. That's interesting. But in Britain, that's just not the case anymore. Everybody seems to wax. And this awful thing that kind
but
of like...
that's something I don't understand. Why did that happen? Why suddenly did
everybody
start to wax?
Well, I mean, again, I don't really do research, but there seemed to be a massive correlation between the rise of pornography, in which everybody is waxed, and suddenly everybody waxing. If you think about the only place that you see vaginas, generally, unless you've got a very free and easy family, it tends to be in pornography, or a very free and easy workplace. But it tends to be in pornography, and the fact that we were kind of, monkey see, monkey do, seemed to be very much what was happening there. And the thing is that the reason that they, because I was talking to a porn director, and the reason that they wax in porn films is just so you can see. Just so you can literally see what's going on. In order to shoot that area, you need to remove the hair in order to be able to do close-ups. And also for men, it makes their penises look bigger. So we're doing this, we're engaged in this gigantically expensive and time-consuming charade in order to fulfill an aesthetical pornography that's not useful. We don't need to see what's going on down there. Maybe you do, but I suspect most of the sex that you're having isn't kind of craning your head around this way and looking at what's happening while it's happening.
But
so it's kind of useless.
I once talked to kind of like a school nurse who said that she actually thought it was a good idea because for a long time she was an old kind of like feminist school nurse, and she'd been like trying to get all her girls to sit down and look themselves in the mirror and see what's beside the legs. And then she was like, but now they do, because they have to shave. And she looked at it as liberation.
Oh, well, that's quite good. I mean, that bit's good, but I think there could have been another way that we could have persuaded girls to do that without them changing the aesthetic of what the female body looks like overnight. Just things like, there's a whole load of things. First of all, it means that if the only vaginas you see are completely hairless, obviously I know the real word's vulvas, but it feels weird saying that word. If the only vaginas you see are hairless, then when you start growing hair when you're 12 or 13, you instantly go, I'm wrong. Suddenly, overnight, I've got a problem. I am a problem, and I now need to solve this. And that breaks my heart. It's difficult enough to go through puberty as it is, but the first sign that you have of becoming a woman is a problem. And you now, the chances of you going to your parents and going, I now need to remove the pubic hair from my vagina are very small. So this is the first time you keep a secret. You creep away and you go and find a razor and you shave it. Or, increasingly now, you go to beauticians, you take your pocket money. My beautician's constantly turning away little teenage girls, 13 and 14-year-olds, who want to wax their pubic hair. So this is just the signal that this sends out to young girls. The first thing that happens to you, you've got to keep secret. Then, of course, the second thing that happens is you have periods, and you have to keep that a secret as well. So suddenly the first two things that you associate, suddenly you kind of like, when I was a kid, I was just a human being and I could just do what everybody else did. As soon as I became a woman, I had to keep secrets and have problems that were costly. And then as you go on into your future life, just, you go on into, your teenage years, and then, you're starting to have sex, and just the upkeep, the way that it drives a tank through your life is insane. If you're going out on a Friday and you're managing all the hair on your body, you have to go, right, okay, I'm going to shave or wax my legs on Tuesday because I need to put the fake tan on Wednesday, because if I put the fake tan on Tuesday, it'll go into those little holes that you get when you wax or shave, and it'll look like I've got freckles on my legs. So wax legs Monday, fake tan legs Tuesday, do armpits Wednesday, why not? Thursday would be the best day to do my Brazilian, because then there'll be no regrowth and stuff, make sure there's no stubble and stuff. But I leave it till Friday to do my upper lip, because I wouldn't want there to be a slight sort of, hint of Hitler when I'm getting off with someone in a nightclub. And that's a whole week of you got, like the Matrix, just this kind of spreadsheet comes down of when you're going to be doing the hair, which bits of hair and when and where and all this kind of stuff. And the cost, it hurts. And when it grows back, it's itchy. You're walking around and scratching it. And the cost, if you add up what you would spend going to a beautician or just, spending on waxing and razors and stuff for all of your life, that's the money you should be putting in your pension pot. That's the money you should be buying you a yacht. And instead you're spending it on kind of keeping keeping this hair free on the vague off chance that you might have sex on Friday, which, Because more often than not, it won't be. And the amount of times that I've had female friends who, because they've waxed, have just had sex with someone they don't really like that much, just to make it financially worthwhile. It's like, I have now invested £30 in this. I'll just do it anyway.
You know, in this audience, like, you know, Denmark is really small. So it's kind of like, I mean, the population of Denmark is like half of South London.
Yes.
And the feminist population in Denmark is really, really, really small. So I know that here, there's at least kind of like 10 women who've been out and been like, I'm a feminist. And then all the reaction they get, they're just too bad. And they've given up.
Oh, where are you? Come here. Come with me.
Big
You can come and live in South London. It's the size of Denmark, and they'll let you be a feminist there.
Because I think their experience is that it's really, really provocative, and people get mean when you say you're a feminist. Have you experienced that?
Well, no, generally no, and I've been lucky, and that is a deliberate byproduct of the way that I write. And this is, you know, I think there's a lot of not more modern feminists. There's a lot of fluffier, happier feminists like me who tend to slag off angry feminists and go, you're the enemy. They're a kind of old, hardcore, angry feminists. And then there's us, and all we want to do is laugh and stuff, you know. And I want to laugh, and I want to change the world as well. And I'm absolutely allied with the angry feminists because I know why you're angry. Because anger comes from fear and being hurt and being constantly shat on. But when I write, I deliberately try not to evoke an emotional response, not an angry one anyway, because what I learned from a very early age, being in a very big and very angry family, is that if you say something angrily, all that people can hear is the anger, and they will respond angrily as well. People hear emotion, and they will respond emotionally, and then you're in a position where no one's listening to anybody. And I'd seen this time and time again in debates that I'd seen across all the things that interest me politically and culturally, that people who were absolutely saying what I believed, and who came from backgrounds absolutely identical to mine, and who I'd absolutely ally myself with, were being ripped to bits simply because they were being angry. And I just went, well, I will not be angry then, you know, because I want people to listen to what I'm saying. This is how I'm going to do it. And also I can't argue. I literally can't argue. My face goes very red and I cry and I get very bad hiccups. So I didn't even have the choice of being an angry feminist. I just would have been a crying feminist. And I thought that was probably not a good genre to invent. But that would be. I mean, the thing is, I wouldn't begin to patronise anyone who's been out there on the feminist barricades doing anything, because any woman who's out there as a feminist has got massive fucking balls. You know, it takes enormous balls to be a feminist in this day and age. But the one thing that I've learned that, you know, has made it easier for me is to never be angry.
But why do you think people get so angry at the feminist? Why does it take so big balls?
Well, a lot of it is because the feminists are angry, and quite rightly so, you know, and you know, without feminist anger, you know, sometimes you need feminist anger. Like, you know, we have to remember that 100 years ago, women were being discussed in scientific journals as having brains the size of animals. You know, it was kind of like they would not have the same capability as adult men. You know, that they need to be looked after. You know, and you needed a whole load of fucking suffragette and feminist fury to go and fight through that. And people died, and people chained themselves to things. People protested. They had bombs. They were terrorists. You know, this is again why sort of people go, oh, feminism is really boring and any kind of revolution's boring. It's like, no, this is, you know, people who want to change the world. You know, this is explosions and life-changing stuff and changing whole demographics of the world. So I totally understand that anger. But the anger that comes back is fear, because there's no one ever gave power away. Any time that power was shared, it was taken. And so anyone that you're trying to take power from, which is men, will be scared. And what do scared people do? They get angry. Anytime I hear someone angry, I just go, this is fear. You know, anger is fear heated up and speeded up. And that's what happens in discourse. And so, you know, these are men that don't want power taken away from them.
What's the meanest comment you got, like going out as a feminist? What hurt you the most?
You know what, it was absolutely fine. The stuff that really upset me was there were a couple of things that were, you know, horribly misunderstood, the worst possible things. Because if anybody says to me, like, you know, you're fat or you're unfuckable or you're ugly or, you know, all the kind of things that, you know, or I'm going to, you know, I've had rape threats and all this kind of stuff. None of that can upset me.
You had all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, not that, you know, but, you know, kind of none of that could really upset me. The stuff that really upset me is there were a couple of things that were said or were misinterpreted on Twitter that made it seem that, like, first of all, that I was in some way racist, and that secondly, that I was against transsexuals. And those two things absolutely broke my heart, because that's the worst insult you could say to me, that I wouldn't want to take everyone with me, or that I had any hatred or any anger towards anyone at all. And those are the insults that hurt me.
And why would anybody accuse you of being a racist?
When I interviewed Lena Dunham from Girls, I had no idea that in America there'd been this massive debate saying that she was racist for not having any women of colour in the show Girls. And that seemed to me to show, well, first of all, it's a semi-autobiographical show with the same lot of actresses she used from the last thing, and it was just a practical thing. And, that's just the show she wanted to make. It's about spoilt white girls moaning about their lives in a kind of Seinfeldian way. That's the point of the whole thing. But there'd been this big debate, as all art should provoke. It's a fair enough question to ask. But it just meant on the day that I announced on Twitter that here's my interview with Lena Dunham, I think you're going to love her, Girls is an amazing show. I got loads of people from America going, well, I hope you asked her why she's such a racist bitch. I hope you asked her why Girls is just a disgusting, piece of privileged, feminist drawbridge pulling up and stuff. And I'd never had these people before, sort of the angry intersectionists, and I didn't know what the fuck it was. And I was really hungover, and I was really upset that they wouldn't love my Lena Dunham and my show. And so I just went, no, because I don't give a shit if she didn't have women of colour in Girls. This is what she made. I don't give a shit that there isn't, women of colour representation in the media. Not that I don't think commissioning editors should hang their heads in shame at the repulsive way that the media is skewed towards white people. But just on that show, why are you blaming Lena Dunham for this? This is, to call her a racist is horrible. Anyway, that was it. That was enough to have me have people just calling me a racist piece of shit and saying they're going to lynch me and hang me. It was a misunderstood thing on Twitter, but kind of that upsets me. Anything that, someone could say where they wanted to rape me or I'm fat or whatever would not upset me at all. The idea that I would hate someone would really upset me. Yeah.
Is that because you kind of grew up with 7 sisters and brothers, so you're kind of a little bit hardcore with these things?
Well, just because I wouldn't care what anybody who's genuinely horrible would say. Someone who's clearly, threatened by me and repulsive, I wouldn't be upset by that at all. But someone who comes from a minority background who's always felt really hurt and upset, who would think that I was also making their day worse, that's awful. I want everyone. I come from the oldest sister in a big family. I just want to bring everyone along, and the idea that anyone, that some black girl in Alabama's sitting there and just going and wants to read this book and then just goes, I heard on Twitter that Caitlin was a racist, so I don't want to read it anymore. That would just break my heart. And whenever those girls got in contact with me going, I'd read so much nice stuff about you, but then I heard you were a racist, every single one of them, I followed them back and DM'd them, which is talking to them secretly on Twitter, and just went, here's what happened, I promise you I'm not, I'm so sorry if anything I've said's upset you. That broke my heart. But apart from that, it's been fine.
But do you... Have you ever kind of thought oh no, I can't do feminism anymore. I'm fed up. I can't do it anymore.
No, because every day when I look at my girls, I just think it just increases the pressure. They're 13 and 10 now, and they're going to go out in the world. I've been able to keep them in my lovely, fluffy world, but they're going to have to start going out there soon. And the only way that I can make sure that they don't have awful moments where they suddenly stand there full of self-loathing going, oh my God, this world is horribly unfair and I'm completely screwed and I feel like I'm in danger, is if I change the entire world before they get out there. So I've got 5 years left. I'm on a bit of a deadline, so I'll not be staying for drinks afterwards because I do have to change the whole world. But that's the thing that that's what keeps me going.
What's the thing that you most want to teach them? Because you might not change the whole world before they're old enough to be enough.
I wrote a column about this recently. I'd come back from the Glastonbury Festival and I'd smoked so much that I thought I was going to die. And so I rather self-pityingly wrote this column that was a posthumous letter to my daughter to open up after the funeral, going, here's a piece of advice
That's melodramatic.
Yes. I didn't show it to her, I just published it in the Times. And I said, there's several key things. First of all, don't go out with a boy that you think needs to be mended, or a boy that makes you feel like you should be mended. You can waste years of your life on that. Only be friends with the people who make you feel like you are the best you are when you're most comfortable with them. Don't hang out with the people who make you feel awkward and you walk away going, I should have been cleverer. You'll waste years of your life on them. Make peace with your body as soon as you can. Lie there at night and go, thanks for running around, old legs. Thanks for digesting, old tum. Just really appreciate your body in a way that girls don't get to. And the other thing we do is we sit down and we watch MTV. I think if you're a feminist and you're raising girls, you know, especially with middle-class mums, they can tend to sort of go, and I'm just going to hide you from all the awful things, and we'll just ignore that that's what the world's like. But the world's there and it's waiting for them. So, you know, we sit down and we watch MTV, and when Rihanna comes on, you know, and she's sort of like, we've got a ball gag and chain on, instead of me going, and we won't watch MTV, I just go, oh, look at Rihanna, poor Rihanna, God. Another video where she doesn't get to wear a lovely cardigan and a pair of trousers, like... She must be so cold. Imagine if she was on her period that day, like kind of... She's so rich and so powerful, and yet she keeps ending up in her pants on the floor being spanked. That's weird, isn't it, girls? How do you feel about that?
So you're kind of like combining MTV and conscious reasoning.
Well, I think the key thing is that feminism is not a set of rules, it's a set of tools. You know, you just need one or two things that you need to know. One... you know, women are equal to men. Two, how you can tell some sexism is happening is to go, is this happening to the men? Ask yourself, are men having to deal with this kind of thing? And if the answer is no, then some sexism is happening. Three, be polite. You know, sort of, if you ever have any kind of qualm about how you should be sort of dealing with your political feelings and how you want to forward your political cause, just say, well, whatever I'm doing, I must do it in the politest way possible. And fifthly, don't start smoking. That's not really anything to do with feminism at all, but I'm really feeling the effects. I really wouldn't recommend it.
You know, I would have liked you to end reading about like how you have to stand up on a chair and shout you're a feminist, but just like a few sentences from that, then we will end.
Oh God, I've lost the thing on it. Hang on. Sing. Fill this time by singing. Fill now, fill. I don't know where it is. You see, I wrote the book, but I can't remember where it is. I've no idea where it is. I'm so sorry. And I will sing.
Tell us.
Sorry, I can't.
Why is it that? What is it that we have to do when we want?
Well, I think it's just reclaiming the word feminism and reclaiming the word, you know, and strident feminist as well. Don't be an apologetic one. Go right out there and say I'm a strident feminist, and you know, just get to the point where you realise that feminism is what you need in your life, and you stand on your chair. Because everything's more exciting if you stand on a chair while you do it, and you just stand on your chair and go, I am a feminist, I am a strident feminist. And, you know, and I did that as I was writing it, and it made me very happy.
Great, thank you for coming tonight.
Oh, no, thank you, darling, thank you.